We've covered the big picture stuff on the Alvin Bragg / Juan Merchan corrupt trial with Trump and Stormy Daniels. But now we have backfill to do with lots of Trump-friendly lawyers coming out in his defense and offering new details that I haven't presented to you yet. So welcome to Doug in Exile. This is where the happy patriots are. I try and make news every day, a little bit of entertainment, and a little bit of getting you caught up on the bigger ideas and the bigger reasons why Trump is going to have to defeat New York, not in court, but at the ballot box. Let's watch.
Would you go from felonies to misdemeanors, and what would that mean for Trump?
Yeah, you can always ask for a lesser included charge, but Harris, speaking of misdemeanors, this case really started out as a minor bookkeeping misdemeanor that the statute of limitations should have run on years ago.
And this trial should sound familiar to the E. Jean Carroll trial, where the statute of limitations was magically removed. They said, oh, because of COVID, we couldn't address this, so we had to put it off. In this case, and then Alvin Bragg digs it up, raises it from the dead illegally, specifically to go after Trump. And then those are normal charges that would be a misdemeanor, and he raised them up to felony charges. Even as he has criminals in New York who go from felony charges, he reduces them down to misdemeanors all the time. By the way, this is one of our favorites, Phil Holloway. He's here on YouTube that we love quoting.
But it's Alvin Bragg who is the one that, in my opinion, is being dishonest, because he's taking this misdemeanor and he's bootstrapping, federal election law and trying to call this some type of serious felony fraud, which really is just a bookkeeping issue. And by the way, speaking of fraud, it's another example of a New York prosecution going after Trump where there's no victims.
There's no victim, no crime. They won't name the crime. And Phil Holloway is going to explain why that's significant. They have to name that crime.
About non-disclosure agreements, they are standard. Wealthy people, prominent people use them all the time. Even Fani Willis here in the Fulton DA's office has non-disclosure agreements with people in her office, I'm told.
So they're trying to nail Trump for having an alleged non-disclosure agreement with Stormy Daniels. The jury is still out on if Trump ever signed it. She signed it. We don't know if he signed it and is being held by it. But she agreed to the hush-up money, which it's not hush up because they don't like using that word, Trump supporters, because hush up implies he did a crime, and people use hush things to cover up illegal things. Non-disclosure agreements, I've signed a non-disclosure agreement with every employer I've ever had. So if that's a crime, then guilty.
In Manhattan. And we were talking about this in the context of the Sixth Amendment and the right to be put on notice if you're the defendant of what you're accused of. And so what Alvin Bragg has done is he said he committed this misdemeanor, even though the statute of limitations ran, it's really a felony because he committed that misdemeanor with intent to commit another crime. And he literally says in the indictment, actually, committed another crime, and he doesn't specify what that other crime is. And he does that 36 times. For 36 felonies.
That's Phil Holloway with Ashley Merchant, who was the attorney against Fani Willis and Nathan Wade. And she is going to talk about how they will not say what the crime is, what Trump is guilty of. There's no victim. Remember, in the Judge Engeron trial, they were going, who did he bilk out of money if the banks are happy and every business person he's ever been in with, there's no crime?
Well, Phil, that actually sounds a lot like what we have going on here in Georgia, where we have these indictments for making false statements, but the prosecution is refusing to tell us what the false statements are. It's like, oh, they violated an oath, but we're refusing to tell you what oath was violated. They made false statements, but we're refusing to say how they're false or any of that stuff. It's very similar to what's going on here in Georgia. But what I'll say is that the only way to challenge these is pretrial. And if a judge is not willing to do something pretrial, then we end up having to go in front of a jury. And I think that's what you're seeing in New York right now, where Trump is having to go in front of a jury because the judge wouldn't get rid of these.
So they will not name the crime. So then if they say that he tried to cover up a crime, which is what triggers it to be elevated from a misdemeanor, but they won't talk about, it implies that he's guilty of a crime they've never charged him with. But it's just like Fani Willis also couldn't name what lie he told or what misstatement he made.
We're in a blue state. That's all by design. Don't get it twisted, folks. They do this intentionally, just like they're bringing the one in Washington, just like Georgia. They pick these states on purpose.
The trial is the punishment, and they know they're not going for a fair trial. That's why, as Alina Habba said, they're targeting blue states only. This wouldn't hold in a normal state unless it was bury the needle blue, which they have to be able to rig a jury pool and get a higher number of them and even get the everyone from the district attorney down to the judge sympathetic to their ridiculous cartoonish charges to be laughed out of any real court.
But what's important with this notice, and I'm getting caught up, so I'm not sure, you may have already talked about this, but notice, we need to know what to defend against, first of all. But second of all, it's important for double jeopardy. If you don't put what the person actually did in the indictment, and then a couple years down the road, someone else wants to go and re-indict a case or bring something up, how do you know if they were already on trial for it if you don't put enough information in the indictment?
I love these lawyers thinking that like the rule of law is still there, as if the Democrats care at all about double jeopardy. They're like, double jeopardy, double schmepperdy. That only applies to when a Democrat is under double jeopardy. A Republican, we'll give it a new name and it'll be fine.
Well, this is clearly an illegal, unconstitutional gag order here. We have gag orders to protect criminal defendants who are going through the process. It is a limited time, place, and manner restriction to protect criminal defendants and their constitutional rights. And for these Democrat prosecutors and these Democrat judges to put a gag order on a criminal defendant is truly un-American, is breathtaking.
And of course, the go-to on the Democrats is to try and shut Trump up with a gag order. So this is them playing small ball. It's not going to work. It's entirely backfiring on them. That's the good news is Trump's never done better. You saw him come out in the last video to the public in New York, and they're cheering him on. Little minority kids are going, "We love Trump." This is his campaign, guys. They didn't take him off the campaign trail. They put his campaign trail on steroids.
President Trump, if there's anyone on the planet who must have the constitutional right to speak out about the judge, the prosecutor, the staff, the witnesses, the bias, it has to be a criminal defendant going through a criminal process.
Especially one who's campaigning as president actively. He needs to be able to defend himself to the public and say what he wants to say. They can't have that. They know that they own the mainstream media and they have to control it through that media. That's why we here in alternate media are out getting you the real truth they won't tell you. I hope you'll reward us with a subscription. Give us a like. Let us know your comments below. This is Trump territory. He's loving it. He's in his element, guys. This is where he thrives. And this is what he knew he would go through. The Democrats didn't see this when they launched all these campaigns against him. But Trump saw an opportunity. That's what brilliant businessmen do. I'm Doug in Exile.